100% of everything going on in the house, like consider it 100% on you. Don't think this is a 50-50 marriage. Well, my wife just woke up and now it's my turn to wake up. No one wins in that situation. The only way you as a man win is by just going all out.
Get ready to tune into stories of average men striving for greatness, to become the leaders that are needed in their homes, in their career, and their communities. This is the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast.
Hey men, what is up? It's Scott here again, and I have with me today Will Braunstein. Will interviewed me on his podcast, a Dad's Path podcast. You can find him at dadspath.com. I'll tell you that again at the end and we'll make sure it's in the show notes. But Will has been going through the journey of first-time fatherhood, which I think is really cool. And so what do? You start a podcast and you start talking to other men about fatherhood, which I think is amazing. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thanks a lot for having me, Scott. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I just love it when somebody's like, hey, I'm going through this. I'm going to create something. And so let's talk about that because, you have one child, if I remember correctly.
Two kids.
You have two now.
Yeah, the first one caused the podcast.
Yeah. So you're a seasoned veteran, yes. So, you have a kid and you decide to start a podcast. Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really started the website, the podcast kind of all at the same time, A Dad's Path. But the reasoning was that, as I myself had a really good father. I still do, had a great childhood and felt really ready to be a dad. And then reality struck, right?
Right.
So, and I was ready, that's the thing. I was ready. I was also overwhelmed because it's an overwhelming sensation. There's a lot going on, a lot of change happening for you, for your family.
Oh yeah.
You're adding to your family, so that I think, I was sort of struck by that you can have both those thoughts at once. Like I am overwhelmed, but that's okay. It's normal. And I started looking for resources, to help me, and didn't really find them. I saw a lot of stuff for moms out there, which is great. And, I think, if I'm going to stereotype a little, hopefully not too offensively, but, moms tend to be maybe better at talking to each other, at opening up with each other.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's changing, which is cool, but it's still less natural sometimes. So in any case, I didn't find the resources for dads out there. And I talked to other friends, other dads, and started the site. I skipped a couple of steps, skipped a lot of research and learning everything I could, formally learning. And but then, started the site and all that sort of thing.
That's really cool because you're absolutely right on multiple factors here. One, it's overwhelming when you're even a second time dad. I mean, it is really overwhelming. Our nature is to provide for our family, feed our family. And in today's environment, there's a lot more expected of us, a lot more we're involved with. And it steps outside of our DNA a little bit, if you will. And then the thing that guys are horrible and I'm working really hard at getting guys to, I just had an event and the whole premise was like, it's time to come together and like shed your social armor and like be who you are and share what you're going through because other men need to know because they can learn from that and they can teach you from that. So here you are, you're by yourself kind of in this fatherhood world, you and your wife, but you're like, okay, no one talks about this. I'm just going to start talking about it, which I think is just amazing. I think it's incredible when somebody takes that sword, if you will, and kind of charges forward with it. And podcasting's been this really cool opportunity. I think it's really helped a lot of men put out a voice that's needed to be put out there. So that's what have you learned?
Right.
In 30 minutes, would you tell us everything you've learned about fatherhood?
Right. Yeah, no, as my wife likes to joke, men will do anything to avoid therapy. So here comes the podcast kind of thing.
Okay.
But no, I mean, being able to talk to, first of all, I am joking, therapy, is a very good thing, but
it is.
I was able to do, a lot of learning on my own and then more learning through the podcast, through, interviewing sort of thought leaders in the space and interesting dads and men like yourself. And, the other side about the overwhelming aspect is you're always going to be a little overwhelmed. Like, I like you're sitting here quietly, like, oh, Will's so cute. He's got a little 7-year-old and he thinks he has things tough. Like, I've got a friggin' teenager, man.
Right,
Like,
right. There's always
I
another
mean,
element.
yeah, it's a whole nother world,
Hmm.
So, it's not going to get easier, I don't think. So, you need, I mean, it changes, right? The
That's
challenges
it. It's
change, the
different.
opportunities change, all those sort
Right.
of things, all those sort of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you've embarked on this journey, but you do understand that the answers don't stop because as you evolve and your kids evolve to get older and older, the problems change, the tactics change, the experience changes. I think it just keeps getting better and better. So how old are your kids?
7.5, 4.5.
Okay,
A
so
boy and a girl. Yep. Yep.
still pretty young, still pretty young. So what's been your experience doing this? I mean, you said you've been tapping into thought leaders, talking about to other men in this scenario. Like, was it a little overwhelming what you were learning at first, or were you kind of like, oh, thank goodness, there's other people that have the answers for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of both, right? Like I would have a issue and then look for a thought leader to help solve it.
Yeah,
I mean, so things along. I think a lot of challenges are internal, and understanding the emotions that are happening, for us as new dads, and how we should be acting and how we should quote unquote dad. Do we raise our voices? How do we do the right consequences for actions? Those sort of things, right? And it's easy. It can be really overwhelming, but at the same time, there are answers, and not answers like you do it this way, but answers like here are ideas, and this might work, this might work, this might work. And I mean, whatever works today, to your point, will not work tomorrow. That's part of the
right.
fun and the huge challenge
Oh, for
of raising
sure.
kids, right? Like
Yeah,
they learn, they get smarter.
they do. They
So yeah,
evolve.
they evolve. Oh man, yeah, they've outsmarted the system. Yeah, they've escaped.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
yeah.
So man, how many do you know the number of interviews you've done or podcasts you've done at this point?
Not a huge, yeah, maybe 60 or so around there.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's like, think about that though. 60 conversations with specifically around being a dad. Uh, that's a lot of learning time. I don't think you should undervaluate that
no,
at
thank you.
all.
Actually, I appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
easy to, yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And there's prep time for each one, and then also I'm on other podcasts like yourself where,
Yeah.
um, and I'm sure you're the same way. If you started adding up the hours that you're not being a father, but you're studying the art of being a dad, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not insignificant. You should feel good about that.
Oh yeah, no, and what you're doing, I just want to say it's really, really amazing because the one thing in my group that I get a lot is I have a kid coming and I have all these things. So you touched on a few of the things that guys really seem to struggle with, emotional response, anger. Anger is a big deal, right? Like, and what are the societal expectations of what I'm supposed to do in this situation, compared to how I want to respond in this situation, and just the emotions. I think there's so much out there for women. You're going to have these emotional roller coasters. You're going to feel this way when well, where's the thing that says, hey guys, your wife's going to be going through major hormonal changes. Uh, Buckle up. I mean, and so what has been the response? What's been your experience as you've kind of gone through this and taken this journey?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the roller coaster concept is right on, and not for all emotions. I mean, the way that it resonated, with me is, you read, gosh, you have this baby, and the angels come from above, and da da da. And I mean, that's true in a lot of ways. But then when the challenging days come, there's complicated emotions because you're trying to, as you said, react in the right way, and raise um, a child in the right way, so they'll have the right ethics and the right, all those sort of things. So that's where the roller coaster, can come also emotionally internally. So understanding that, I think, really helped me, and also helped other dads. That's what I'm also sort of happy with, or proud of, no matter where I've done a bunch of podcasts, but, I have a couple thousand dads signed up and, getting my emails and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
getting some value. And if there's just like a little value each time, from some of the dads, then, I'm sure you look at your impact the same way. It's like, hey, we are doing something good no matter what. Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that you got that going for you, right?
Right. Yeah. So what's the biggest feedback or thing that you really see fathers focusing on? Because I know what mine are, but I've got fathers and grandfathers and all sorts of to be fathers. It's a very big range of guys in my group, and I get this input. Maybe you do too, but I get this input from all areas. But what do you think is like the biggest thing on their mind?
Yeah, I mean, so we get a couple things. One is figuring out your role, both
Mhm.
internally, but then also like how to be useful. When you're talking about the fourth trimester, when the first 3 months, the first year, the first year and a half or whatever, where dad is depending, no matter how involved they want you want to be. Uh, the your child needs mom, right? For maybe for
Right.
breastfeeding, maybe for just preference.
Yeah.
um, so I think there's a lot of feedback around that, because again, it's like on one end you have the angels coming from the sky, I've
Hmm.
got this beautiful baby, and then on the other end, in the middle of the night or whatever, they're crying, things are really hard, you're trying to add value, you're not sure if you are. um, so that's certainly one area. And then as the kids get older, as we alluded to, keeping your temper as a specific,
Yeah.
like,
That's a
gosh,
big
this
deal.
is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Not raising your voice, how you react, those sort of things.
Yeah. So if I were a new father and I'm asking you a question like, "Hey, how do I prepare?" Do you have a blanket answer? Do you have a way that you answer that? Because I have a way I answer it. I'm curious what yours is.
Uh, no, I don't have a blanket answer. Yeah, I mean, I think you need to prepare to be unprepared. Like I
Yeah.
said, like a lot of things you're going to be surprised about, and one of the reasons is because every kid is different and every family reacts differently, and there are some things that are going to be similar. Like you said, there's hormones going on and things like that. Uh, but at the same time, there's a lot you're not going to know. I mean, get your sleep. I would say that prepare.
Yeah, no joke. Real practical. Like sleep when
Yeah,
you can.
yeah. What's your answer? It's that you said, yeah.
Oh, my answer is it's pretty simple actually. It's pretty simple but very hard. It's not about you. Like you give up. Like give up your hobbies, give up your perception of what it's going to be like, give up what you think your role is going to be. Give up the way you think your wife is going to act. Give up how you think a kid is going to respond or sleep or uh, vomit or whatever. Just understand that you know nothing, and your role is support role, and whether that and so I kind of always wrap it back into the 100% rule. Like 100% of everything going on in the house, like consider it 100% on you. Don't think this is a 50-50 marriage. Well, my wife just did, woke up and now it's my turn to wake up. No one wins in that situation. The only way you as a man win is by just going all out. So don't smother, but just be very perceptive to what's going on, and then don't get wrapped up in the emotions. Like your wife might kick you and say you're ugly and she can't stand you. Well, you got to understand that there's so much going on hormonally, because we'll get guys like, well, how long till I get to have sex? And I can't sleep and I have to work the next day. And I'm like, hey buddy, your wife can't sleep and has to breastfeed all day. So like put it away. That's really what I'm like. You just got to die to yourself, really.
Yeah, no, I think that that's great advice. Yeah, and then figuring out uh, the next step, right? The phoenix, the rebirth, because at some point you do need to find that balance in terms of, at the very
Very good
least,
point.
right, like working out, right, or taking care of yourself or whatever it is,
Really good point.
and then keeping your mental health. And but you're right, at the first parts, you really need to be subservient to the family at large, because
Yeah, and it,
that's where
it
you are.
doesn't mean you're not in charge. It doesn't mean you're not the leader. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just it's servant leadership at this point. And I'm glad you said that, because I don't want anybody to get me wrong. You will perform best for your family if you are fit, if you are eating right and you're getting the right amount of sleep and you're performing your duties to provide for them. You've got to make sure that you're taking care of those things. Now, I'm just saying it may not be, hey, I get to watch an hour of football. That might be a changing thing in your life for quite a while. Or I get to come home from work, kick back and drink a beer. Like, no, that's not going to go over so hot. And that's really where I think a lot of guys kind of miss this. Like, they grew up seeing their dad do X, but they don't remember when they were tiny what was going on. And maybe their dad was a really bad example, but
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. No, I mean, what you're saying is spot on, and you're talking about prioritization, right?
yeah,
Saying like,
yeah,
I still want to grab a beer, you know, but I can't do it until I've done all the other things. And number
right.
one is taking care of my family, and number two, is then getting my workout in, and I don't have much time, and because it's after work, and then during that first year or whatever it is when you're not sleeping at all, it's not the time to have it, because if you're doing that, then you're not getting as much sleep, and you're maybe one night, but
Yeah.
to your point, yeah, you change the prioritization, and that's something you can review over time too, and because your kids will change, they'll require less, they'll require different things, is better than less, they'll require different things.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah. I think the best message for fathers, I think you would agree, is be prepared to be unprepared, because they're just changing. Every stage is completely different. I kind of hate to put you on the spot here, but what's been your favorite stage, your favorite age so far?
oh, it's it's hard. It all kind of comes together. I
I
mean,
know.
yeah, yeah. I will say I love little babies, but once they got a little bit beyond that tiny baby stage, I really liked being able to connect with them. I mean, that's maybe number one. So, when you ask parents, at least a lot of parents I've spoken to, like their favorite age is the age they're at now. And they're earnest about it. They're honest about it. It's not like,
Yeah,
oh, I love my little,
that's my
like
answer.
I love them equally. Yeah, no, it's like
Yeah.
it really is like a true answer. And my 7.5-year-old, we play chess now, right? Like
Wow.
we do
Cool.
other things. We play little soccer in the yard, and tennis in the yard now. Like, so those are things that we could never do when he was 3.5. I'm sorry, 4.5, my daughter's age. Not the same way. Yet when he was 4.5, he tells these ridiculous jokes, and that he doesn't tell now. So that that doesn't make me sad. It's more just like, that was then, this is now. My daughter, who's 4.5, tells these ridiculous jokes that make me laugh and laugh, and I'm going to be sad when they go away. But then we'll be able to do something. So I
Yeah.
understand now that answer of my favorite age being their current age.
Yeah. In fact, I can agree to that wholeheartedly, except for this one, like 6 month, I think for some parents it's longer, period when all of a sudden, I mean, just out of the blue, and this is teen years, you go from becoming knowing things to being a complete idiot, and your kid knows everything. That happens, and that's real, and it is so challenging. It's like, no, I like, they have the answers, and we're so lucky. Ours was really quick that went through that
what
stage.
what sorry, what age was that?
So 16 for my oldest, who's now
Okay.
18.
And
But
and that was a boy? That's a boy?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
girls, it's going to be different, boys and girls. Everybody I've interviewed, but man, I'm telling you, guys who have not hit that stage yet, there is this point where you every day you're like, am I dumb because I'm being treated like I'm a complete idiot? Like, you know, it's so hard to explain, so it's hard to prepare people for, but it's literally, you're looking at someone, you're thinking they literally think that they know everything about everything, and that is a very, very, very challenging phase. It's
Oh,
hard
I
to
bet.
like somebody that acts like that.
Right. No, I bet that's, and that goes, to a premise we try and teach at a younger age, which is uh being aware of the words "be careful," right?
Oh,
And because it's very easy, and you see parents all the time when they see their kid, at the playground, "Be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful," and then that's what's the message you're sending, right? And the real message, you need to be specific, right? Like, what's your plan when you get to the edge of that concrete, or what's are you going to jump off there, or is that safe? Having them think about it, and that it feels like there's that corollary in a way where it's like, all right, that headstrong teenager, they're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your job is to keep them on the track. They can kind of bounce off the walls a little bit, but they got to stay on the track, right? So
Yeah. The way
whatever. Yeah.
I love that you brought that to this point, to that point, because I do really, I get fearful. I watch my wife get fearful about things. Like my 18-year-old wants to get into mountain biking. I've been cycling forever. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to wear a helmet and then be careful when you're riding here. So that because cars pull out. I'm like, when did I become this guy? And it goes back to Jordan Peterson, whether you like him or not. I really like the saying he says is, what is it like? Let your kids do dangerous things carefully. And that's kind of what you're talking about. Like, hey, yeah, go climb on that thing. But what's your plan if you get really high and you start to slip?
Yeah.
And like think through the consequences, but sometimes they got to learn on their own. And I think that there's do you feel this way? I feel there's way too much coddling and like this air quotes protecting their kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There absolutely can be. So that's, it's good to be aware of that, right? Like, I think you're spot on. But yeah, you have to make sure they don't do anything too crazy.
I know.
So,
I know.
the other Jordan Peterson quote I like a lot, I'm paraphrasing, but he tells his kids that they don't have to follow stupid rules as long as they're fine with following the stupid consequences of breaking those rules if they get caught, right? Like
exactly. That is probably my favorite one, because I've had that conversation with my kids. Like, I don't agree with the school on that rule. And if a kid is notoriously he's bullying you, I taught them how to put him down. I'm like, here's a very effective way, even if someone's really strong, to take care of the situation. But understand that that's against the school rules, and understand that you will be dealing with those consequences. We will have our own things at home, but understand. There's so much freedom in that, because now they have these, if I A, I get B, but they're using critical thinking in between. So I think it's beautiful. I'm glad you brought that one up. It's one of my favorites. So
yeah, no, and then just on the flip side, there's a dad who came to me, and really smart guy, didn't finish high school, and it ended up that they wanted to test everyone for marijuana, and he was a user, which and his dad would agreed on the principle, really that shouldn't be allowed, that shouldn't be a reason. So we never graduated. And I disagree a little bit with the dad. I agree with the premise, like that shouldn't be something in schools, and that wasn't a public school or anything. It was a specific situation. But at the end of the day, it's really important you have your degree. And when I talked to the dad, he felt the same way. He wished that he would have gone that other path and figured that out. And again, he's living a great life. He's got kids and things are, he has a very good job actually. So that's the other lesson. You never know where life will lead you on that path. But as fathers, I think it is important to, there are some areas where you have more knowledge and you can think further. As a teenager, they don't have their brains aren't fully developed, and right. So that's our job.
My wife has to remind me, and I know this as with a degree in psychology, the brain really doesn't stop or doesn't get to full development till like 26. Because I'm like, our 18-year-old, like, what is he thinking? She's like, Scott, you got to understand, he's like still like youthful in the brain, and there's a lot of learning, and it's really difficult, and it's just kind of like having these really wide guardrails that are outside the ditches. So you got the road, then you got the ditches, then you got these guardrails, right? You want them to be able to like go into that ditch and have a really bumpy ride and maybe get scratched up, but then you don't want them to go off the cliff.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a really great analogy to how we're trying to guide the kids. Is like, we're going to give you room for error. We're going to tell you what probably is the best solution or the best way to handle something. So have you had talks? You have a 7-year-old. So have you had talks on how to deal with bullying or any situation in school with them? Have you had to go up against that?
No, thankfully, have not. Yeah, I feel very fortunate from what I can tell about the school. It's been I haven't heard of that or seen that or anything like that. So doesn't mean I'm sure it happens, but just
Yeah. Yeah. Well, middle school was
Yeah.
brutal. Middle
Yeah.
school was brutal for me. It was brutal for my kids. And that's where all those conversations came.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, let's assess what we're going to do here, because you're going to get in trouble if you do what I want you to do.
Yeah, no, that's right. I will tell you what I'll miss, when we go back to the age thing, that, I love how they get older, and but I'll just say, my son on the weekends wears pajamas. That's like
Mm-hmm.
his jam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, he will go to the playground, to a school playground on some weekends, and there'll be some other kids there, and they won't care. They'll say, "Hey, you're wearing your pajamas," or whatever. At some point, someone will say something, or he'll just say, "Hey, this isn't normal, and I don't want to
Yeah.
do it." I think,
Yeah.
or not. I hope, or maybe, hopefully, he'll never feel that external pressure anyway.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing that's so cute that, it'll be a little sad to go away, but all you can do is appreciate it, right? All right.
Yeah.
So, this
Yeah.
weekend I'm going to take him to the playground, and we'll go in our pajamas.
Yeah. Yeah, that cuteness does go away. I mean, there is a time. I mean, I now call my sons handsome. They're teenagers, so you're
Yeah.
handsome, emerging into manhood, and it is a completely different thing. And I had a memory thing pop up. It was like 10 years ago today on Facebook, and it was my little guy playing soccer, my youngest, and he was 4. And he's like running, and he's running with his thumbs up like this. He would run by us, and he'd have both his thumbs up with this funny grin. And he's like, oh my gosh. But it was super cute.
So
and we still do see the fun thing as a father is you can still do that with him. Like I'd make that. And if you're not watching, I'm really sorry, because it's just classic, but I'll do that to him. And he's like, oh my gosh. And he laughs because we've shown him the pictures. Cause he would always do that every time. Hey, Corbin, how's it going? He'd give us the double thumbs up. But you can hang on to those, right? Those create incredible memories. And this is a really big point. I think you probably agree with me, is a lot of fathers are so buried in their phone and their work that they're missing those moments. So have you had conversations with men around that point?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, on a lot of different levels, on the work-life balance, and changing that to the literally in the moment, the minutia of, kind of checking your email while quote playing with your kid, right? And understanding, that's where, I mean, it's wrong, right? Like,
Yeah.
you separate those two things for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, and actually a kind of interesting reason that I think might be worth exploring, not in this conversation, but any psychologist. But when you're checking your phone, there's like the dopamine issue happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you're like, do I have an email? No. Yes, and you get this spike. So I think there's that like spike,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes down, and then you're going to play with your kid, like, you know what I mean? So things are just,
Oh, that's real. That's
real.
real. Yeah. So you're giving up like a dopamine hit to go play with your kids. So there is a lot of studies around that. And I think it's why it's so, I mean, you just kind of nailed something I never really thought about. So my brain's reeling here, but it's so incredibly important to keep that completely out of that scenario. Now I can be a little over. So I took my son to the barbershop to get his haircut. And I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. I'm sitting on a couch. It's 2. I'm waiting for him. He's 14. He's telling him what he wants. He's getting it done. And a little boy comes in. He's carrying a phone, of course, which drives me freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And his dad sits down, and his son has to sit next to me, which is kind of awkward anyway, right? And so his son asks him to move, and he moves. And his dad sits down to me, flips open his phone, and I'm like, you're missing the opportunity. So I'm already like, I'm gonna like, okay, whatever. Then he gets on Instagram Reels or TikTok, I'm not sure, and he's got his phone on full blast, and he's listening to all these reels. You know how the music changes, the sound change, everything sounds every time you scroll. And I was so pissed. Because everybody around him now is listening to this, and what I was upset about was the fact that, give your son a phone and sit him. He's probably like 7. Sit him over there, make him entertain himself, and then you're going to go in your own world. And I stood up and I looked at him and I said, I did not come here to listen to your bleepity bleep TikTok. This is ridiculous. And I just looked him in the face, and he just like stunned. And I walked away and sat somewhere else. And at the end of the thing, my son goes, "Why'd you get up all of a sudden?" Oh God. But that, I mean, I'm so passionate because I see the damage done by parents who are zoned out on their phones when they're with their kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's so many things, right? As you said, it's a missed opportunity. It's teaching bad habits. Yeah, and it's just sad. I mean, so as dads, though, what we can do is take that as inspiration, right? And say, okay, that's not the right way.
Oh,
That's not
absolutely.
how I want to be a father, because a good father would be playing with their kid and talking to their kid and teaching their kid good lessons in a fun way, or whatever it is you want to be doing, just interacting and connecting and loving, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that kid didn't have that from his dad,
Me too.
but that doesn't mean that my kids won't. And other dads who are listening to this hopefully will feel the same thing and say, hey, I just because I see bad choices made doesn't mean I have to be there.
Right. Yeah. And so I didn't love how I responded in that situation. I wasn't like, I didn't threaten him. I'm just like, I don't want to hear this. This is silly. Right. I'm like straight up. But what I always use, especially at the older ages, is I tell my son, this is what happened. This is what happened in my head. This is how I responded. This is how I wish I would have done it differently. And I think, so I've started to reframe things that I would feel bad about that I did into, no, these are really great opportunities to take like the way I responded and glean on someone else to learn from my mistakes. So even if that gives them a little bit of a like, don't overreact in these situations, control what you can control. I could control by moving away, but I felt so bad for his kid. And I think this is just the norm now. It really is the norm. And it's really sad.
That's crazy. So did you talk to the kid or the dad?
The dad.
Okay.
Yeah, looked him right in the face.
And did he respond?
He was in shock.
Yeah. Yep.
He stopped playing his stuff out loud. I mean, that was done at that moment.
Wait. It was the dad who was doing the TikToks?
Yes, it was the
I
dad.
thought it was the kid.
Oh no, I wouldn't do that to a kid. Absolutely not. No. The kid was on his own phone. No. Oh gosh, you're probably going, dude. I'm getting interviewed by this crazy man right now. No, I said it right to the dad. I stood up right to the dad and said, dude, I did not come here to listen to your stupid social media, whatever really I said. Funny. Yeah. But it's like I felt so bad for the kid.
Yeah.
Because we know what's going to happen. It's just going to be repeated. But you're right. That dopamine, relating the lack of dopamine hit when you're with your kid, when you can get it real fast from the phone. I've never put those two together, but that's got to be dangerous.
Yeah, and you get emails, right? I mean, sometimes it's like like a clothing email, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible news. Da, da, da. It's like, oh, okay,
totally changes everything. Yeah.
Right.
Have you turned off all your alerts on your phone, or how do you deal with that personally?
No, I have not. I don't have a smartwatch, so I think that's a plus. And I don't keep my phone sort of tethered as much. I mean, it's with me obviously when I'm traveling, but I don't tether it to me.
Yeah. I have a smartwatch. It has, I'm like, I tell my wife, this thing is dumb for me even to own because I've turned off every notification possible. It's just a watch that always has the right time.
Right.
And it tracks my sleep. I'm like, it's really ridiculous because doing this when you're talking with your kids and you hit something that's, I think is so incredibly important. When you open an email, I mean, a good amount of times can be pretty bad news work wise. Like all of a sudden I'm like, I've had many times where I've looked, I'm like, and it completely changes my mood and I'm out of the moment. I'm not there with my kids.
That's right. You lose the moment.
Really,
and that's dangerous. That's one of the main lessons that I've learned and keep learning, but just in life in general, I mean, staying in the moment, when you're playing with your kids, if you're 100% with them, they feel that, you feel it. I mean, that's where the connections happen. And, that's with everything, right? Like with work, you need to be able to focus, with working out. And that's where also like working out and meditation and things like that, whatever your tool is, can be good to help you get better at that, because it's a muscle, right? It's not easy to focus, especially in this 24/7 weird world of like, we're just talking about emails all the time and text and this and that. I mean, as connected as you want to be. So too
connected. I love the focus mode on my computer. I can turn it on my my phone and it turns my computer on to focus, and vice versa. Let's wrap this up, because everybody knows what my like skill set or my practices are to keep myself, you know, in the moment and mentally and physically prepped. You just talked about meditation, you just talked about exercise. So what are some non-negotiables in your life that keep you sharp and functioning as the best father and husband you can be?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, it depends on the sort of age of your kids and where you are, but I'm at the age where a good word now is balance, like we said, kind of
Mm-hmm.
where I am able to prioritize more things on my plate, which is good. So I have non-negotiables like working out. That's really important, and
Yeah.
uh, I have others that should be non-negotiables, maybe that happened in the past that kind of go away when I don't feel like they're serving me as much, and I need to bring them back. And a couple examples would be meditation. There was a time I was meditating all the time, and that was really uh, felt beneficial. Another one, which I hate to say because it's so simple, and it's like is walking. Just going for like a
Oh,
little walk every
walking's
day.
massive.
It's
It's
so crazy.
huge.
It's
It
like,
works so well.
yeah, no, yeah, like beats any bad mood almost. It's like it's so crazy, and then I'm like sitting in my office in a bad mood. I'm like, oh, there's nothing I can do. It's like, dude, just walk.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here. Oh, there's nothing I can do.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and I'm really glad you said it's kind of it's stupid because it's so simple, because it is, but guys don't do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I would even go as far as like leave your phone behind. Like let yourself
Oh, that's
have
smart.
some time to just like time. And those walks, man, they're magical. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and then when we talk about other areas of balance, I mean, it's really important to have the social side, for
Mm-hmm.
me. So to have friends and, in different ways, like we don't do maybe not out as late, but,
Right.
but,
Right.
like we talked about in the beginning of the call, like having dads you can talk to and open up about things. Oh man, I feel really bad. I raised my voice
Mm-hmm.
when I shouldn't have. I said this, which was just really not the right thing to say. And it feels so good to do that. It's crazy, and I mean,
Yeah.
that's saying, like therapy and that whole thing, but it's just, it's a way to kind of build friendship too on another level, at a time where it's really hard because you don't have as much time, and that's just how it is. And then the other area of balance, I mean, when you talk to sort of dads and relationships that didn't end successfully, or
Right.
ended with separation, I should say, because that's how it was supposed to end, or that's how it ended. They say, a lot of those dads say, gosh, we just didn't invest in each other.
Yep.
We love our kids, we are great parents, we spend so much time with our kids, and and have all this balance in different areas of their life, and then with their spouse, with their partner, it just isn't there. And that's an area that needs work, because that, talk about things that change, like you change internally, but your guys' relationship totally changes, I mean, in so many ways.
Yeah.
We don't have time to talk about that, obviously, but that's something, if you don't
It's something I talk
invest
about
in.
a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure if you don't
Yeah.
invest in it, it can go away.
Yeah.
So that's another part of the balance that's really, really important.
That's awesome. I think that's a really good place to wrap it up, because I think that's something guys need to think about. Like you gotta nurture and cultivate your relationship with your wife, because that is ultimately like, hey, if it's too late, it's too late. But that's ultimately something your kids are really going to. It's a developmental thing that really helps them when you're together, you're working together, and you're in unity. But it's very hard because life changes. Will, thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable and fleeting at times. So thank you very much.
Well, it is valuable, and Scott, your time's valuable too. But we're trying to serve a higher purpose with,
Yep.
hopefully this isn't just me and you listening. Hopefully,
I don't
the
think
dads
so.
on the audience
We're good.
will get a lesson or two, or learn. And even if this, if not, I've gained from the conversation,
Same
right?
here.
Like,
Yep. Yep.
so my kids will be better, and I'll feel better as a dad. So Scott, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot for
Thank
having
you.
me. I'll
Yeah.
see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you. You guys, that's it. If you're listening, it's like, if this made a difference, that's all I care about. That's all Will cares about, is that, something you can glean from this. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. Make sure you check out dadspath.com. I was going to say life, so I would have totally messed that up. A dadspath.com and then a Dad's Path podcast. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.